Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Shauna Kalafi. We are covering a big story out of Europe. Authorities investigating a massive heist of chocolate bars. Nestle says nearly 12 tons of KitKats. That means more than 413,000 candy bars have been stolen as they were leaving the company's production site in Italy earlier this week. The KitKats were in a truck headed to Poland to be later distributed throughout Europe. And Nestle says the candy can be traced using a unique batch code that's assigned to each bar. But so far, that truck and its sweet cargo is still nowhere to be found. And we have this statement posted by KitKat today in response to this news saying we can confirm that 12 tons of KitKat products were stolen while in transit between our factory in central Italy and their destination in Poland. We are working closely with local authorities and supply chain partners to investigate. The good news, there are no concerns for consumer safety and supply is not affected. So I'm sure KitKat lovers are glad to hear that news, that the supply at least won't be affected. For more on this, we want to bring in law enforcement expert Jamie Copenhaver. Jamie, what was your reaction to this?
Yum, yum, right? We're the KitKats. Sean, I've got to tell you, I've done the news contributing thing now for about 16 years. I've never covered anything remotely like this, and just bizarre. But listening to the numbers that you cited in your opening was just astronomical, right? So unfortunately, it comes down to cargo theft, and these thefts are not uncommon. It just happened to be KitKat candy products that were stolen this time. But, Shauna, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that the bad guys are raking it in.
So this is possibly connected to organized crime. And when people hear that word, they often think about drugs, weapons, but even products like this can be stolen in those mass quantities. And this really takes a lot of planning and strategy. How would something like this be pulled off? What kind of method would be used to pull off a cargo heist of this magnitude?
I mean, it's certainly, I'm going to suggest it's some type of an inside job. You know, we hear that word inside job with the air quotes, but it's going to be someone that had knowledge of the shipment, number one. Number two, the transportation of that shipment and where it was coming from, where it was going, et cetera, on the route. But more importantly, you have to unload that's a ton of candy to unload. So you have to have that well planned before you essentially go out and heist these candy bars. And then, unfortunately, it's going to end up on the black market, if you will, and be sold whatever country or state it's sold in. They're going to bypass the tax laws. That's certainly going to hurt the economy. But more importantly, someone in that store, whoever's going to peddle this stolen candy, is going to make a small fortune off of it.
And that's what I wanted to ask you, Jamie. What is going to be done with all of this candy? And then you were talking a little bit about the consumer impact, although in that statement from KitKat, they say that the supply won't be affected, but this could still impact consumers, right?
Well, it's the bottom dollar, right? There's not a safety concern yet, but, think about it. You have many online outlets that these products can be sold on, right? So they're going to be, from the internal security part from that manufacturer, they're going to be combing the dark web, the internet. They're going to be combing all of these sell sites to see if there's a allotment of candy just popping up for sale. So all of those are going to be worked out in the meantime. Is there a safety concern? No, not yet. I mean, it was going to be sold. We just don't know who's in possession of it, and what their motive is. But it's going to come down to one thing, Shauna. It's going to be greed. You're going to see a organized crime connection to this theft, much like every other cargo theft that we see in the news every once in a while. So, you have a plethora of organizations throughout the globe, especially Europe, throughout the UK, and right here in the United States. They're doing these cargo heists on a monthly basis.
Let's talk a little bit more about that, because this may sound odd to people who aren't following this type of crime. But as you said, this type of cargo crime does happen pretty frequently. What kind of products are targeted, and what is the payout for something like this for the people responsible?
We see a lot of petroleum thefts in transit. You'll read in the news cycle every once in a while that a tanker had been stolen from a storage facility, if you will. With the price of fuel, I mean, you're going to double your money on the black market with that petroleum. But, there's construction goods, there's petroleum. We saw about 2 years ago a shipment coming in from Europe via ship, and that ship was offloaded somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, presumably by pirates, if you will. We hear the Somali connection once in a while. That's a little bit different in terms of what we're looking at today, but although it's a cargo theft. So it's an array of products, Shauna, and unfortunately the consumer will be impacted by this because, somebody purchased those products. They're not going to get them. So, the company's going to have to reimburse whoever ordered that shipment of candy. And, lo and behold, the consumer is going to probably fill up the pocketbook on this.
And we know that this was leaving a facility in Italy heading to Poland. So actually crossing some country lines there in Europe. How would they approach investigating something like this? How would authorities really track down the person responsible along that route from Italy heading all the way to Poland?
That's a great question. So you're going to have, it's an international investigation. You're going to have a multi-countries involved in this. I mean, it's, we look at it as it's just KitKat bars, right? But the numbers that you cited were just astronomical in terms of the bottom dollars. So, certainly that shipper wants to get to the bottom of it, and they're going to do an internal investigation to figure out if someone on the inside of that shipping company may have leaked some information, or it was just somebody watching or doing surveillance of these transportation of trucks and boats. So law enforcement across the board is on top of this. I know that out of the UK, they had a organization connected to U.S. law enforcement. They were tracking these goods coming across the Canadian border that were getting taken off on the Canadian side of timber, of wood. So that case was solved in about 6 months. They apprehended everyone involved in that, but that was a multi-billion-dollar operation too. So, it's going to be one-on-one police work, but it's an international case, and it's going to take all the countries working together. The caveat to that, they know a lot of these people that are involved in these cargo shipment thefts and track those organizations. And like I said earlier, don't think of it as the word the mob or the mafia, but it is going to be some type of criminal organization that is targeting these cargo thefts for profit.
All right, some really interesting insight for a pretty interesting story. Thank you so much, Jamie Copenhaver, for joining us. We always appreciate your time.
Always good to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. And we want to show you again this statement put out by KitKat today. Again, in Europe, authorities investigating a massive heist. Nestle saying nearly 12 tons of KitKats, more than 400,000 candy bars were stolen after leaving the company's production site in Italy earlier this week, headed to Poland. And KitKat putting this out, saying we can confirm that 12 tons of KitKat products were stolen while in transit between our factory in central Italy and their destination in Poland. We are working closely with local authorities and supply chain partners to investigate. The good news, there is no concerns for consumer safety and supply is not affected. We will continue to follow that investigation in Europe.